Hi guys, about a week ago my neighbors gave me this light. It was the folks I was working on their Jeep, helped them out with a little project there, and they gave me this light, and it's a little bit better than the one I have. I think it's a little older. It's made out of some pretty good material, and the one I have is just a lot of plastic. I mean, it's a real traffic light, but it just shows you as time goes by they just make things cheaper and cheaper. So this one's a little bit older. It's not an antique or anything, but it's just made out of better materials. Now, I don't know anything about it. They didn't know if it works or don't work. I don't know if it has a sequencer in it. I don't know anything about it. All I know is I opened each one of these just to check inside, just for loose wires. You know, we didn't want any unwanted sparkulation to occur. So I checked all that just before I wired in a plug. It was just a bare cord. Somebody just cut the cord, and I wired it into a temporary cord here with a plug on the end so we can test it out. And y'all going to find out at the same time I do. Does it work? Does it not work? Does it flash or anything? But what I found, something interesting, and I'd never seen one before. When I opened this up, there was a little disc in there about the size of a nickel, and apparently it goes in behind the bulb in the socket before you screw the bulb in. And how am I doing, Mr. Heavy Chevy? He says you've got to use your hands and talk with your hands and point things out, so you can give me a rating on this. But yeah, that little plug goes in behind the bulb, and then you screw the bulb in on top of that. And across on that little plug it said flasher. So apparently the folks that had this and was using it before I got it had the yellow light flashing. Now I don't know if the other lights were on or if it was just a flashing yellow light. I don't think that was something that they used out in the real traffic light world. Maybe, but I wouldn't know why, because they needed to. You know, I think they set them electronically somehow to just flash yellow. A lot of times they do that at the intersections if there's something going on. But they wouldn't have gone out and taken the time to screw that flasher into each light. So this is probably for some home use. At any rate, let's plug it in and see what happens. Y'all stand back now, because you know how things go around here sometimes. Okay, well, all the bulbs are good, but obviously it does not have a sequencer in it. You know what? When I ordered when I got that other light, got that from my friend. I got it back in, was in South Carolina and got that light. My friend Invisible Bob hooked me up with that. He had a couple and sold me one, and I brought it home from South Carolina. But when I put a sequencer in it, I ordered a second one. I don't know why, but I did, and it's over there in the shelf, and I'm going to put it in here. I don't know if I'll hang this up here in my shop or put it outside. I could just leave it like it is and hang it here in the shop just for some ambiance. I do believe my pants are on fire. Looks like my chair's on fire. I believe my table's on fire. Hey, welcome to Rat Rodding. My name's Waylon Wire, and don't ever do what we do here on this channel. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about this GMC 702 cubic inch V12 engine. Now, in one of the previous videos I was talking about these things having an internal PCV valve. which they do, and a gentleman had told me that you needed to take those out and plug the holes. Well, he said you need to take them out. And I said, well, if you take them out, do you need to plug the holes? And he said, yeah, you got to plug the holes where the PCV valves were, or else fumes can get down into the crankcase, and if it backfires, it'll blow the oil pan off and the head pan's off, the rocker arm covers off. Well, okay, my question was then, if you block it out, how does the crankcase breathe? You can't have the crankcase build up pressure. Well, he said, well, out the valve covers. Well, if it could breathe out the valve covers, how did it force it through the PCV valves then? You know, and I wasn't getting my mind around it. And the reason I wasn't getting my mind around it is because there are two different systems. And in my head, I was trying to combine these systems, and it didn't compute. It didn't work out. Okay, fast forward, a gentleman over in Idaho, nice guy, made a comment on one of my videos about the PCV valves, I think, and I contacted him, and I called him up, and his name's Marty. And Marty was such a nice guy, and he explained to me so that I could understand this. Like I said, the reason I couldn't get my mind around it is because it's two different systems. Well, I just learned this, prior to 1963, yeah, they used this system, and what they had was these, you have these rocker arm cover vent caps, and they would go here and here and into the intake, and into the intake, and that's how they vented the crankcase. And I have 4 of them because I have 2 of these engines out back, some spare engine parts engines or spare engines. Actually, there's enough there to build 1 engine, and I may sell all that stuff to somebody, because that was my plan, was to take those 2 and build 1. And then I ran across this one, happened to be on eBay shortly after, well, I don't know how long, but after I bought those 2, there's 1 bad block and 1 good block, and you can take everything and make 1, and that was my plan. Well, somebody's commented to work, can I get my hands on one of those engines? I absolutely have to have one, and I told the guy, email me and we'll talk about it, and never heard anything. That's the case 90% of the time. People get excited, and then I don't know, they kind of come to their senses or something. I don't know what it is, but then you never hear from them. So I would part with those 2 engines probably. But anyway, that was what the deal was. And then in 1963, they went to this internal PCV valve. And it looks something like this. There's various kinds, different shapes and sizes, but they all got that little ball in there, that little check ball in there. Sounds just like an external one, you know, that's a more modern one, that you put in a hose. It comes out of the rocker arm cover. But I got 4 brand new ones, and I'm going to put them in. And there's nothing wrong with them, because I found out you can't just plug those off. But it won't run if you leave them out. For sure it won't run. And I need to go with the system that I have. That's my jump box over there talking to me. Let me go shut that off. Okay, so I got my PCB valves, 4 brand new ones, $5 a piece from Bob over there at Thunder 12. And I'll get to that in a minute, but that's what I'm going to do, is put those new ones in, and I can take the 2 that I borrowed out of a spare 305 engine that I have, V6, and then the 2 that I took out of Jimmy Hoffa that I borrowed just to make this thing run, because I wanted to put water in it and bring it up to temperature, which I did. So now I can put those back in Jimmy, and I can put these in here, and then you plug off the valve covers, which I'm going to do with a little bit of bling bling, as you see here. And this one I've got to make it a little bit tighter fit. But that's how I'm going to run it, as it was intended to run. So I thought that I was dealing with the difference between a stationary engine and an engine that ran on the road. And somebody commented and said, well, they weren't as concerned with emissions out in the field running irrigation pumps as they were. And that's why the ones on the road had had a different system on it, but that's not the case. What it is I wasn't dealing with the difference between a truck engine and a stationary engine. I was dealing with the difference between years, because those truck engines that I have, yes, they were in trucks, but they were built prior to 1963. They built these V12s from 1960 through 65, so it tells me I have a 63 or later model. I have a 63, 4, or 5 model. Now, the gentleman in Idaho, Marty, as it turns out, I had watched some of his brother's videos years ago, because he has a GMC truck or 3 and some nice trucks, and I had commented on his videos and maybe a few times, and well, then when I mentioned Marty, he goes, "Well, that's my brother," and I go, "Yeah, I know, I just got off the phone with him." But those guys have some really nice GMC trucks, and they're up on this stuff. They know these GMCs, maybe not the V12, but they know their V6s, and a lot of that stuff's the same. So I'm going to show you some pictures of Marty's truck, and I think I got some pictures of that his brother sent me as well. Some beautiful GMC trucks, and we'll throw those in because you're going to like them. They're awesome. Now, to get to Bob over at Thunder 12, there's a website. There's 2 websites that you guys need to look at if you want to learn more about these V12 engines. I got these PCV valves from Bob for $5 a piece. You can't beat it, brand new. And Bob gave me permission to show some of the video and that they have from their website. Go to Thunder 12 and check out their stuff. What they were doing is buying these cores, and they were making these things to rev 5,000 RPMs and put out a bunch of horsepower. I think almost 500. As they are, they only put out about 275. But they were redoing these things and reworking them, and I mean making engines out of them, boy, and putting them in, put a turbo 400 behind it. Put several different transmissions behind it with the stuff that they build. So check out Thunder 12 if you want to learn more about what kind of potential these V12 engines have. Not that I'm going to do that with this one. They would sell you, back at the time, I don't think they're building the engines right now. I'm not sure why, if they don't have the cores or what, but a couple years back, you could buy one of these engines that they'd done for about $18,000. They would sell you a core for $4,000, but they couldn't guarantee if it was cracked or not cracked or good or bad. So that gives you an idea of what these engines run. They're not cheap, and there's not very many of them left. They're very, very rare. But I wanted to say that about Thunder 12, and Bob, he's a nice guy, and he's emailed me back every time right away when I had a question, and he sent me those valves and right away, and he's a good man, and he also gave me, like I said, permission to show some of the video. Where I first heard about these engines was through the Blastoline brothers. Now, if you don't know who Randy Grubb is, get on the old Googler there, and you look up Randy Grubb. He's a gentleman down in Oregon, and he's a fabricator and a builder, and man, he's got a mind like, it's scary. It's a scary place. So, Randy Grubb built Jay Leno's tank car. He's been featured on Jay Leno's garage a few times because of radical stuff that he's done. And he built the deco liner. He built these little pods, these little motorcycles. He called them a pod, and very futuristic stuff. And he does everything out of polished aluminum. And man, what a fabricator and builder this guy is. And he takes years to some of his projects, but it's just unreal. But my first introduction to this V12 was because of a rig that Randy Grubb and another guy, I believe, built. They called themselves the Blastoline Brothers at the time. And they built the B702, they called it. And I'm going to put a picture of it here for you, and then you can go to his website. Please check out Randy Grubb, and you'll find the pictures of all the stuff that he's built. But that B702, they call it, had these, I just fell in love with it when I saw it on the internet. It had these big fenders like a Delahaye, you know, and a boat tail rear end, and these big Delahaye fenders on the back. Awesome stuff. And it had one of these engines in it. It tells about it in the story, GMC V12, and that's when I got hooked, and I thought, man, I'd love to have one of those motors. Never thought I could have one. So that's how Jimmy Hoffa came into play. I bought Jimmy Hoffa from a guy down in Yakima for $300. It had that 305 V6 in it with these plaid valve covers. That's another story. But 1963. 63 is the only year they did these plaid valve covers, and I don't think they did them on the V12. I've never seen any or pictures of any. But I just happened to have two 1963 305 V6s that had them, and I put them on here because I like them. Now, I never thought I'd own a V12, so I bought Jimmy Hoffa, and my idea was that I was going to find two of those, find another one of those V6s, and couple them together. Now, I know I can do that. They do that with V8s all the time, and I figured if they can do it, I can do it. So I was going to couple two of those together and make my own V12. Well, as things went along, I discovered those other two, those blocks that I have, or engines that I have out back, and ran across those and wound up getting them. Robo Frank, man, did me a solid. He actually went to Canada and picked those up for me, and bought those. So in the meantime, then this thing comes along, and so I never did have to tear old Jimmy Hoffa down, and now he's kind of like part of the family, and I hate to junk him out anyway now, but that brings me to this. I'll talk about coupling two of those engines together. Okay, there's a rumor out there, and there's a myth, and it floats around the internet and other places that these engines are two V6s bolted together or built and coupled together, somehow made together. That is not true. That is a myth. These are one solid block with four heads, and I've showed you that in the other videos. No question about it. It's one crank. The crank weighs 180 pounds, and this is a true V12 engine, and I'm going to tell you where you can get all the information on this. Go to a website called 6066 GMC Guy. And man, what a wonderful website that is. It'll tell you about all the V6s that GMC made. Plus it tells you everything you want to know about this. It has all the stats. It'll tell you that it's 275 horse. It'll tell you that it's 630 foot-pounds of torque at 1600 RPM. And it'll tell you what the rev limit is. You don't want to run these past 2400, the red line at 2400. One, if not the lowest revving gasoline engines ever came out of Detroit. This right here. Now there's some pretty cool pictures on that website of 6066 GMC Guy, because there was a dealership in Texas, I believe, that bought these things by the semi-load, and they show them, a big load of them coming in, and they put them in these cradles like I have here, and they sold them engines for irrigation pumps. So that's where a lot of these come from. The ones that are still left are from the irrigation pumps, and that's what this one was. So I had to swap out the bell housing and the flywheel and you know, bought pressure plate and dual clutches and the intermediate plate and the whole deal. But I got it up and running, and I've got the Eaton Fuller 10-speed sitting behind it. And if that ain't enough, I've got a 2-speed rear end out there, and we can have 24 gears if we need to, but I don't think we will. Anyway, go to that website. There's a cool picture that shows this thing in a semi pulling the Minuteman missile around back in the 60s. So there's some real interesting stuff on there. It'll tell you how these plaid valve covers came to be. There's two theories. One is that they had some recalls, and that they when they made the repair, then they put these on so they would know they were done. Well, I don't like that story very much, because first of all, they didn't know they were going to have recalls, and they probably would not have built a bunch of different valve cover gaskets just to have on hand so that when they got a recall they could fix it. I tend to believe the other story. The other story is a lot better. It goes that these things were not known for good mileage. So in their endeavors to get better mileage with the engineers changing the cams and whatnot, the ones that they had done and maybe had working pretty well and improved the gas mileage a bit, they put shelf paper, some contact paper, shelf paper on them that happened to be plaid, and that's how they marked them. And then the story goes that some of the marketing guys came through and saw that and said, well, we got kind of a bad reputation for mileage, and now we're getting that better, and we'll just make these valve covers and put them on there, and we'll call it the Thrifty 6. In those days, I guess the Scottish people were known to be thrifty, so they're going to call this tartan covered engine the Thrifty 6. Well, you couldn't get away with saying stuff like that nowadays, but back in 1963 you could. So that's the story that I tend to believe is that's how those that they came about, because they did call them the Thrifty 6. But go to those two websites. Go to Thunder 12. Check out all Bob's stuff over there. Amazing stuff in engineering. Go to 66 GMC guy and check out all the stats on these things. It's incredible what they are. Go look up Randy Grubb. He's down in Oregon, and he, like I said, he built Jay Leno's tank car and a whole lot of other stuff that's out there. It's kind of well known. So check those out, guys. I would appreciate it, and I think you will. I give you that for you guys, because I think you'll like that information, what you learn about these V12s. But that's how I came to be a fan of them, was from seeing that one engine in that one build. There you have it.
I appreciate you.